Good evening, beloved. You're welcome once more to listen to the Word of God to learn a lot of things with us in this Only Warmer channel. Once again, I'm your host, your brother, Mr. Uwoma Ignatius. I believe you all enjoyed our previous lesson, our previous teaching, where we talked about the topic God the Creator. So I believe it was a very interesting topic. In fact, every believer, every person that call himself a Christian need to really go through that message for them to understand the basics of their belief. So we tried a lot to break it down, which we know we can still talk about along the way, and we share some light about it, throw more point about that particular topic as we go through our teaching process. But let's endeavor to go back and listen to those messages because a lot of effort was put in place to break them down to let us understand it very well. It was a very interesting exercise. It was a very interesting experience for us. Please, thank you guys once again for joining us to listen to this awesome channel. We here today we will be moving to another topic under chapter 1. Remember, we are still under chapter 1 of our learning process of our teaching. Under chapter 1, we just concluded the first topic, which was God the Creator. Now we'll be moving to the second topic under chapter 1 with the caption. Remember, chapter 1 is with the caption, the story of creation, Genesis. So we are still looking into the story of creation, the Genesis, how we began, how we actually began, how the earth actually began, the beginning of everything. Now we'll be moving to the second topic there, which says the creation of the earth. So the creation of the earth. Remember, I said our teaching will be question oriented. If you look at how I taught the last topic, there was a lot of questions that was answered in that particular teaching. So if you listen to the message, probably you see a lot of questions that's bothering us have been touched. I don't know. We went a long way to, you know, answer those questions that have been bothering us. So I would also like us to follow the same step in this second topic. So let's search our mind, bring up those questions that have been bothering us concerning the creation of the earth, because a lot of us have many questions about the creation of the earth. A lot of us you know find it so confusing to understand some of the basics, some of the phenomenon that guides the earth, some of the principles that binds the earth together. So some of the laws that controls the happenings in the earth. So today we are going to look out into the creation of the earth, how the earth was created step by step. So we are still looking in the Bible, uh, book of Genesis, under chapter 1, Genesis chapter 1. So we are still looking into it because this is where the story of our teachings comes from. The creation of the earth. If you want to know about the creation of the earth in the Bible, read the book of Genesis chapter 1. Read through them. You will see how the earth was created, the first thing that God created. So today we will read through the book of Genesis. I will use a simpler version of the Bible, so that everybody can understand. I'll go with the King James. I'm sorry, I'll go with the Good News Bible, so that everyone can follow up. The book of Genesis, chapter 1, with the caption The Story of Creation, verse 1. We'll start from verse 1. As I read through, I'll break them down. Each step we take, I'll break them down. So before we actually go through the reading the Bible verses, let me start with the steps, the sequence how the earth was created. He say on day one, God created God created the light. But before he did that, there is some other things he did. But the major thing he pronounced was let there be light. He created the heaven, he created the heaven, you know, and the earth itself on day one. But the major pronouncement he made there was let there be light. So let's read through the book of Genesis chapter 1 to see how God began the creation of the universe. He says, in the beginning, when God created the universe, the earth was formless and desolate. The raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness, and the Spirit of God was moving over the water. That is, we are reading verse 1, verse 2 now. So we just read verse 2, where it says, the earth was formless and desolate. The raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness, and the Spirit of God was moving over the water. Then God commanded, let there be light. You see the pronouncement I'm talking about. Let there be light, and light appeared. God was pleased with what he saw. Then he separated the light from the darkness. I'm at verse 4 now. Then verse 5 says, and he named the light day and the darkness night. Evening passed and morning came. That was the first day. Praise the Lord. So if you have been following my reading carefully, you will see there's a lot of questions answered in this particular verses of the Bible we just read. This, from verse 1 to verse 5, we just read. There's a lot of questions, some basic questions we are supposed to be asking ourselves, which most of us, some of the times, we just overlook them, we take them for granted. And at a point in our life, those things become so confusing and cloudy, we don't even understand how they came to be, which is why I said our ignorance is one of the devices the devil used to put us in bondage. Do you know the devil can use your ignorance about these things to cage you, to deceive you? I can say to deceive you. It might be in your profession. Sometimes due to our advances in science, a lot of things springs up. Even we, the so-called Christians, people that have been reading the Bible, so have been reading this book of Genesis, reading the story of creation, maybe all through our life, but we have never sat down and try to analyze these things, ask ourselves questions, and answer some of the questions that is bothering us. Seek for answers, do our own research. So a lot of questions was answered in this little Bible paragraph I read from verse 1 to verse 5. Now let's see some of the points that have been made there and some of the answers to our questions. He said in the beginning, the first point I'm to talk about here is, you know, the most powerful elements in the world today. The most powerful elements in the world today. Remember, I said I'm more of the type that says nothing, came by chance. Nothing came by chance. Now, if you look, if you have been going through history, especially in religion, in in science, in technology, you will see that the two most powerful, the two most powerful phenomenon or element, as we may call it, in the old times, we can call them elements. The two most powerful phenomenon is water and light. Water and light. So if you look at the religious part of it, you see that most of the times, or mostly, a lot of belief, a lot of religion, you know, have a kind of attachment to the phenomenon of water. I can say they kind of see water as a sacred substance, as a sacred, you know, entity. Yes, these things are non-living things, but they in their own category of creation, they are the two most powerful elements, which controls most of our belief today and controls most of the things we we produce, controls most of the things we we refine or study about, that brings up things that is beneficial to our life. So these two elements are so powerful. It didn't come by chance. There's a lot of questions out there, and some of the people have dished out confusing theories, confusing studies, which, if you don't take time as a child of God to look into the story of the creation, just like we are doing today, you can be easily deceived. Some people might not even come across this knowledge until they live their life on the earth, and they go. But today we are opportune to listen to this message, to know the reason why these things possess such importance in our day-to-day life, in our advances in technology, in our advances in the search of spirituality, in the search of God. A lot of religion believe that water is sacred. If you look at the old religion, most of them, the basis of their worship is around water. Most of them believe that there is so many spiritual being that dwells inside the water, that make it so powerful, that make water to be so sacred. You know, most of the people go to the extent of worshiping water. I guess they take it as their sacred being, as their a kind of god. Some of them take water as a channel through which they can communicate to a supernatural being, which they refer to their god. I got to say, but I want us to learn today what makes it to be like that. So if the facts in the Bible is not true, there will be no coordination between what I'm trying to say. So I'm dishing out another evidence to you, to tell you that what is written in the holy book, which is the Bible, is actually true facts. Is true facts about what God wants us to know. And this are what truly happened. It was not a made up story. Forget what people says, that the Bible is written by a bunch of learned men. It was just like a history book, just like any other history book in the world. In fact, is a very big lie. Because if the Bible is just like any other history book in the whole world, it wouldn't have survived thousands of years to this point. I'm telling you the truth. In fact, the Bible you see here is the most popular history book in the whole world. It's the most popular history book in the world up to date, and it's still going to be many years to come. So, to assure you that what you're reading is true facts, these are the true accounts, inspired. These are true accounts that God inspired men of God to write down, so that we can understand our origin, so that we can understand what is truly happening, what truly happened then, and relate those things that happened then to our own lives. You understand? Because there's a reason this story was written down, because God wants us to know things. God wants us to know how He actually started, I can say, and how we actually came to be. So that somebody will not come and start confusing us. So that when we see these things working the way it was designed by the original architect, we become afraid, we become scared. We are not supposed to worship these elements. I can say, but I want to tell you what made them so powerful, so that due to our ignorance, we thought them to be, we view them in high esteem. If we view them in high esteem, if you are a history scholar, or if somebody who is so good in reading history, if you read back in, you know the BC, the early BC, the AD, thousands of years ago, a lot of religion is so attached with water. Some of them believe that there are spiritual beings there that they worship, possess supernatural power, which is true. I can say, we are still coming to that in our learning process. But what makes those two elements become powerful? If you read the first verse of this paragraph in Genesis chapter 1, the first verse there, you say, in the beginning, when God created the universe, the earth was formless and desolate. I mean, the verse 2 now, the raging ocean that covered everything was engulfed in total darkness, and the Spirit of God was moving over the water. Do you see? So the Spirit of God was moving over the water. So he says the water covered the whole unit. The earth was without form. It doesn't have a shape. So you see the beds of geometry. I gotta say, at that time there was no geometry. There was no. Remember, geometry we study now is under mathematics. There is no shape, no form. So God is the original architect. Everything we know today, both our mathematics, it started from God. So he said it was formless. He didn't say the earth was like his fair. His, so those things never start existing until God allowed them to be. So everything traced back to him. You see where mathematics comes in. Now, water now, going back to water we are talking about, you say the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So if water is not that important, God will not be hovering on, I mean, any substance, any creation that God is so attached to, that thing is very powerful. If God is hovering over water, that shows that water is very important. I can say, you see why among the elements, God created a lot of elements. I'm calling it MLM based on the old perspective of it. So God created a lot of phenomenon. So you can see that God was hovering over the waters. So you can see what made the water so powerful. So there's a lot of hidden things inside the water. I can say. So if the water is a kind of the habitat of God, that shows that there's a lot of things to be learned about the waters, and it's very important. That's why we see it today. Then our ancient humans see it as a sacred creation. Now today we also see it in advances in technology. I can assure you, brethren, that water is one of the most important source of energy. Water is one of the most important sources. In fact, scientists are still studying a viable way to tap into the energy available inside water. They have not concluded the process yet. They are still under study. You know, they have not fully understand a viable way to tap the energy, which is believed today in physics, that the most durable energy, the best energy, and the most sustainable energy, it lies inside the waters. So I will give you a kind of preamble to that, because I know everybody listening today is not a scientist, but there is something, an element in under nuclear energy. Remember, most countries, advanced countries, we might not be witnessing it here in African countries, but most advanced countries, they make use of the nuclear energy to generate electricity. So then it was used for creating weapon of mass destruction, until the scientists that created it said no, we can also use this nuclear energy to generate electricity, which will be very durable, and which will last a long time. It will be cost effective and last a long time, though the building process costs a lot, and it takes a lot of carefulness, a lot of risk. But once established, it can sustain a nation for many years. I can say it can sustain them for many years before they start looking to you know uh, renew renew the energy again. So once you have a nuclear reactor as an electricity source, as a source of electricity, that country is seen as one of the countries with a sustainable, energy energy sector. So, but here in Africa, it might sound like a myth, but if you go out there, like countries like Russia, Ukraine, the United States, they have been making use of nuclear reactors to, generate energy for their day-to-day activities, for their industries, which is very viable, which is very sustainable. Yeah, so What's what is the element? What are the things? What are the raw materials for these nuclear reactors? They use what due to the study into the 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 power of atoms, the energy that lie inside atoms. Scientists discovered that there are some elements that when you break down, when if you're able to break them into some atomic units, they can generate energy, and the energy found inside the atom is so much that if you can control them, it can be very useful. It can very useful in a wide variety of area, like in electricity, is generation of electricity power. So when they start tapping into those energy, now they now say, okay, if we can do this, let's study more, and they gradually they start advancing in that area. That's how the um, the nuclear physics, the area of nuclear physics was created. Now people start studying about nuclear physics, to know more about energy, that lies inside the atoms of different elements, and which elements are viable for that. So they studied a lot of elements, and we know the most popular ones, something like uranium. We have most of them, you understand. But as advances in that sector continued, they discovered that there is an element called deuterium. We call it heavy water in normal, you know in lay language we call it heavy water. But the the what do we call it, the IUPAC, I think the IUPAC name for it is deuterium. You understand? We call it heavy water, deuterium. So that element, it can only be found in water. I can say deuterium is a kind of isotope. We call it an isotope of water. So if they can harness deuterium from water, not any kind of water. I mean, there's a special kind of water you can harness it from. So if they can harness deuterium from water through a nuclear refining process, the energy that lies inside the atoms of this deuterium can generate a lot of energy that can power, at least they can power most of the electricity needs of the whole world. So imagine a substance or an element lying in water that has not yet been tapped. I guess that has not yet been tapped, that can power most of the energy of the whole world. You know, it's awesome. That shows that there's really more to learn. There's really more things to learn about water. So it shows that there are really more things to learn about water. So water is not ordinary. I guess it's the most important element, the most important phenomenon in the creation of God. So remember, he says the Spirit of God was hovering around over the waters. I guess it. So you see why water is so important, both in religion and both in advancement in technology. You see how why there is so much, you know, energy buried, so much power that come out from water. Even before this now, before this study, before this discovery, water have been so important. Remember, even in the early days of locomotives, it was still water, where we have the steam engines that power those locomotives. Today we have hydro energy. What powers it is? The water, the the pressure gotten from water flowing from a dam, I guess, that move turbines. So you can see the kind of energy that lies inside water. So there's so much things, both in the physical realm, in the spiritual realm, that is going on in waters that make it to be so important. So let's not be confused, so that today we will not see it, because you know some pagans may come out and start telling you their theory, about so deity, about so spirit coming from water, that you are going to go and sacrifice. This water is so powerful, this and that. So, as a child of God, do well to call yourself back to the story of Genesis. Now, you can boldly tell that person, I know why this thing is like that. I know why water is so important. I know why you see why your view about water is so. Are you gonna say so? Water is one of is the most important phenomenon God created. Yes, the most important phenomenon. This, I mean, their category. These are non-living things. I gonna say these are non-living things. So water is the most important. Then secondly, we have light. Remember, we are still looking into the 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 first paragraph, which is the first day of creation. So light is the second. That's why most of the most of the standard most of the standard of the technology we are using today, most of the standard of things we do to better our life, they peg it on the speed of light. The speed of light. So if you're coming from a technological background or a science background, you will be so conversant about the term the speed of light. Where even the locomotives today, we have the transport system, the rail system, the best rail system in the whole world is so related to the speed of light. They tell you this is a light the trend that moves with the speed of light. I think we have something like that in Russia. So I think that's the place we have one of the most advanced rail system. They say it moves with the speed of light. The speed of light to the extent that I mean they have not even gotten to the speed of, but it says it's so close. There is something that is so close to the speed of light. Before you can shut your eyes and open it, you are at your destination. So you can see how light is so important. Light is so powerful that we relate it or we peg the standard of things we want to do to the speed of light. And remember, so many religious belief, so many religious study or philosophy is also pegged on the energy of light, the energy that comes from light. Why these two elements are so important? Remember, I told you about water, that today the most the advancement in nuclear energy is is based on this element that can be tapped from water, which is heavy water known as deuterium. So if scientists tomorrow succeed in tapping that deuterium, we are meant to believe that half, I'm just saying, half of the energy needs in terms of electricity, in terms of energy need to power our industries, half of the energy needs of the world is solved. I go say because they say it's the best in terms of eco friendliness is the best. You know, in terms of sustainability is the best. So if they can succeed in tapping it, if they can succeed in having a controlled reaction, you know, a controlled process of tapping into the energy lying inside the atom of this element, half of the energy needs of the world is solved. So you can see how powerful water is. Even without that, this one is something that we are still looking up to. But the ones, the ones that have been tapped, you know, years ago, just like I gave instance about the locomotive before the we saw gasoline or petroleum today as we call it, combustible engines. Then we have the what we call the steam engine. You know, the steam engines where we use steam from boiling water, you know, to power locomotives. And so we have a lot of it. We have the hydroelectricity, and I say it got in from the movement of water where they build a dam. So due to the pressure, you know, the pressure from the fall of water on the turbines, on the blades of turbines, they can generate electricity, you know, from a dynamo. I mean, so there's a lot of energy lying on water. So there's a lot of reason why water is so important. If you look at the spiritual part of it, a lot of religion you know, are so tied with they are so tied in the belief of water. Most of them believe that when a supernatural being comes from water. Most of them believe that water is so unique that if you are to, get close to it, most of your problems can be solved, through, getting to know about the water phenomenon. So, as a child of God, don't get confused when you see all those things around you. When you see such people around you or such happenings around, don't get confused. Don't think it just started today. Or don't think it just came to be like that. No, if you look into the book of Genesis, you can boldly tell the person, say, yes, I know why it is like that. I know why water is so important. I know why light is so important today. Because these are the first two phenomena God created. These are the first two phenomena or elements God created. So we at least we have captured that. If we have captured that, it goes a long way to open our eyes. It goes a long way to broaden our view about the earth, so that we won't get confused when people try to, uh, put their own human philosophy, about these things. So let's proceed. Remember, we are still on the topic, the creation of the earth, the creation of the earth, under chapter 1 of our teaching, with the caption, the story of the creation, Genesis. That is the beginning. So we are looking at the second topic, the creation of the earth. Remember, I said our Bible reference is Genesis chapter 1, from verse 1 to, you know verse 1 to the verse 24, from verse 1 to 24. So that's where we can find the story of the creation of the earth. So we are taking it step by step. Verse 1, I verse 1, I pointed out light as one of the pronouncement of God. Remember, in the previous teaching, I told us that God created the earth, or God created most the things He created with just words of mouth. Most of the things He created was just with words. So the pronouncement He made, the first pronouncement was let there be light. And before then, He says He created the earth, and the earth was without form, and the Spirit was hovering around water. So, and He said, let there be light. So that gets us to the 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 study of the importance of water and light. So if we proceed there, he said God was pleased with what he saw. That is in verse 4. That he separated the light from darkness, and he named the light day and the darkness night. Evening passed and morning came. That was the first day. You see how day came to be. So it didn't start with history that said, I mean, uh, due to the evolution of man. I gotta say, no, God actually created what brought the barrier between they what brought the barrier that enabled us, or enable humans to categorize a particular time, a particular range of time, to be called a day. He says he named the light after he separated the light from darkness. He said, let there be light. Then he separated light from darkness, and he called the light day, and called the darkness night. So a day is made of a day is made of light, which is uh, the time we can actually see. Then darkness, which is the time at those wee hours we need a torchlight or so on to see clearly. So a day is made up of day and night. So normally we call it a day. So where day is the light and night is the darkness. So let's remember, these are the first things. So if you're now thinking about how uh, how did God start saying that He created man on the sixth day? He created this, and so He created this and this on the so day. So God first of all created day. I go say He created the phenomenon of day, so that we can categorize a range of period or a range of time as a day. So he performed these activities under, you know, a day. So that's when he created the earth, he created light. So moving to the next creation, on the second day, God created the heaven, or we can say the sky. Reading from the Good News version of the Bible, call it the sky. It's from Genesis. You see it from Genesis chapter 6, Genesis chapter 1 from verse 6 to 8, Genesis chapter 1 from verse 6 to 8. Then God, then God commanded, let there be a dome to divide the water and to keep it in two separate places. And it was done. So God made a dome, and it separated the water under it from the water above it. He named the dome sky. Evening passed and morning came. That was the second day. So, brothers, you can see that we are now on the second day. So we are now proud to say second day, or we are now, you know, free to say day, a second day. You remember the first creation ended on the first day. That God invented day. I can say he invented the phenomenon we can see and say, yeah, we can probably say, yes, this is a day. I can say we can now, classify a particular period of time and call it a day. So God was, I mean, he said before we start thinking about something, is just, I mean, the apex of our knowledge is the beginning of his. So he knows that this particular period of time is supposed to be classified, you know, to group them, to separate them. And then he devised the term day. So you see, the second creation ended on the second day. It was actually partition. So let's look into what God did on the second day. So remember, I said the pronouncement he made was the creation of the heavens, or we can say the sky. And there's some version that says sky. So we are reading from the good news, which say he created the sky. So what is the sky? He said he divided the water. Remember, he said the spirit of God was hovering over the water, was moving over the waters. And remember, in our first teaching, in where we study God the Creator, I told us that the Spirit of God God is omnipresent, is everywhere at any time. So you see, the Spirit of God is the world was without form and is covered with waters. So on the second day, God separated the water. He made the first one to be above the second one, then created a dome to separate the two water bodies. Now one was on top of the dome and the second was beneath the dome. I can say. So that's where now have the sky. The sky we can look up to, the say it's cloudy. What is on top that cloud is water. I can say these are water separated from the one beneath. So that is what God created on the second day. He created the heavens, or the sky. So the sky, which is made up of waters held up or separated from the one below by a dome. So, brothers, I would like us to stop here for today. Then, before we close for today, I would like us to go back to what we have studied. I can say, then to try to bring up the points again, so that we can put it in pari pursuit, or we can put it in, match them with our questions and see whether some of our questions have been answered today. So remember, we are still on the topic, the creation of the earth, the creation of the earth, under chapter 1 of our learning, with the caption "The Story of Creation." So we have um, we have looked into the first creation of God, where God created the earth and the whole universe, and it was covered with water and with darkness. It was, everywhere was dark. So the Spirit of God was moving around the waters, you know, and then He said, "Let there be light." You see, so you see how why light is so important. So if God, if that was the first pronouncement of God, know ye that it is so important, and a lot of God's energy was a kind of rubbed off, like it was kind of embedded in that pronouncement, which make that element one of the most important elements after water. So remember, the Spirit of God was moving over the waters. That means if the Spirit of God was moving over water, there's something about God that rubbed off. You understand? That rubbed off on waters. That is embedded in that waters that make the water so important today. So even before today, modern times, what have been seen as a very unique, you know, a very unique creation of God. So many people base their worship on water. So many advancements in creativity, in science, they're also based on the findings about the the findings about water. Like I say, there's a lot of things we do. You can't emphasize the importance of water. Even in our domestic, day-to-day activities, we find water so important. In science today, water is seen at the apex or one of the advanced sector of science, which is the nuclear sciences. You understand? So eh, I talked about deuterium here. Why I said is an element that nuclear scientists are looking up to, that can power the energy needs of most parts of the world. So imagine if such energy is buried. These are the ones where we have, which we have seen breakthrough. What about the one we have not discovered? So there's so much packed in. So if the question comes about, when somebody might start to confuse you about how I don't know that some things, such things is inside water, or they perform their ritual on water, or so they try to invoke water. Yes, most of the spirits are inside those waters, but don't be confused. They are not the author. It didn't start with them. It started with the original architect, which is God. So if you want to know, or you want to, you know, if you want to defend yourself about it, go to the book of Genesis chapter 1, from verse 1 to verse 5. I going to say you will see the first phenomenon God created, which is still up to today. I mean, everybody knows light, how we can emphasize the importance of light, and likewise water. A lot of things is happening, with water today. So we can proudly say yes, we know why it's like that. So coming to the second creation, which is the sky. So we can see how God separated the waters above and the one below by a dome. So if it is a dome, I can say if it is a dome, notice it is an evidence that show that the earth is, spherical in nature. Because I believe a dome is like a hemisphere. I can say it's just like a hemisphere. That is a sphere divided into two. It's just like a hemisphere. So that tells you that actually there is facts embedded in this holy book called the Bible. It's just because we have not sit down, and pray to God to open our eyes and let us find things that we have been seeking for the answers for a very long time. These things are just there staring at us. But we read this book every time, often, but we don't tend to, read them with the aid of the Holy Spirit, for God to unravel these mysteries to us. So I believe today we have learned a couple of things. I mean, we can now proudly go out there and tell people that yes, I know why light is so important like this. I know why you view light in such a high esteem. I know why you view water in such. I know why the importance is not so overemphasized. So I can probably tell you that I know the original architect of this. This thing didn't came by chance. It didn't just happen. I can say, and no creature, no being can boast that he's the author of these things. Like I said, the original architect did it before they. Yes, so you can proudly defend yourself. And all these facts are here in the Bible. I can say that's why it's the greatest book on earth. It's the greatest history book on earth. There is no history book that is above the Bible, and none can be. So, brothers and sisters, I I believe today we have learned a couple of things. I also urge you again to take your time to listen again, to listen to this message again at your own convenient time so that you can get the points, so that you can get the message. I believe that our good Lord will see us through as we continue this learning process to enlighten people to understand what have been so cloudy to them, to bring to their knowledge these basics of our belief so that they will not be, you know, they will not be caged by the enemy, which is the devil. So today we have dished out some points. Please endeavor to go through the message again, and please, please, we beseech you to subscribe to this channel. Don't only listen to the message. Help us by subscribing. Help us. Remember, the more we build, the more we build this channel, the more this message go further. You know, the more people see it as an important, platform for them to learn and understand things they might not have known before. Please, brothers and sisters, I beseech you, God bless us as we cooperate. God bless us as we, you know, try, try our best to engage this platform. I bless you. Good night. In Jesus' mighty name, I pray. Amen.